Hey guys, welcome back to the Fanspo podcast, episode 7. I'm Emmanuel Robinson, the host from Australia.
I'm Mohid.
This is a TK from Canada.
And today we are going to be reviewing and recapping the Western Conference off-season. Winners, losers, additions, departures, and much more related to it. Without further ado, let's get straight into it, starting with the Dallas Mavericks, the Western Conference winners last season. Brought back Spencer Dinwiddie, brought in Quentin Grimes, brought in Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall, Melvin Ajinka, lost Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Green, Derek Jones, and a couple of second-round picks. What do you guys think about this offseason for Dallas?
I really liked bringing in Klay. I think defensively, they're gonna have to stagger their minutes with Klay, Kyrie, and Luka. Obviously, none of those guys are good defenders. But offensively, we saw Kyrie had multiple off nights in the finals, and I think Klay can really help to take pressure off of him offensively, as obviously still an elite shooter at this age.
They did well overall. I think Najee Marshall kind of replaced exactly what Derek Jones Jr. provided. I think Quentin Grimes could be one of those sneaky guys that comes in and just contributes, because he's shown to be a good player on winning teams in the past. And also bringing in Klay, I think, is an upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr., who played that kind of exact same role in a sense. So I think overall they got better, and they did a good job, not settling after making the finals.
Completely agree. I didn't know how Dallas would improve this roster entering the offseason after the finals run. I thought this was their best chance at it, but the fact that they've brought in Klay Thompson, who, as TK said, is a upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr., and Tim Hardaway Jr. in the finals did not play. We played a few minutes in a game, that's it. So to add Klay Thompson to either the starting lineup or to be the sixth man is a huge get. Najee Marshall, I'm a huge fan of. He's a very big intangible guy. He reminds me of the energy of a Josh Hart. He's that type of guy that you just need on winning teams. Every winning team will have that type of guy. And Dallas brought in Quentin Grimes, who, again, these type of guys, energy, defense, 3-and-D wings and guards are at a high price in this league, and the higher amount you have of them, the better you're going to be. Love this offseason for Dallas. Derek Jones Jr., really good season last year, but you get Najee Marshall to replace him. You lose Josh Green, who was pretty poor in the playoff run. They got upgraded to every position. Spencer Dinwiddie, really good third string point guard probably for them. Really quality depth, and Jason Kidd and the Mavs got a high chance at going back to the back end of the Western Conference. Next, we'll talk about Denver Nuggets. Brought in Russell Westbrook, Dario Saric, Deron Holmes, Trey Alexander, re-signed DeAndre Jordan, lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and Reggie Jackson. What do you guys think about their offseason?
I mean, to be honest, out of all the teams that are trying to contend, they had one of the worst off seasons of any of them. Losing KCP is really, really going to hurt them. And then they replaced him with Russ, who's obviously, at this point in his career, he's not what he was before in OKC and Washington. And I like the Deron Holmes, but obviously he's injured now. That's really unfortunate. And they're going to be without him for probably all of the season. And overall, they just had a really poor offseason.
This is the second offseason in a row where they've actually gotten worse from their championship run back in 2023. KCP, it was questionable whether he was going to come back or not, but I thought it'd be because the price would be too high, maybe like $25 to $30 million. But we actually signed to a very reasonable contract, so I'm very confused why that was not matched by the Nuggets. And replacing with Russell Westbrook is obviously a downgrade. He's not a bad player, but compared to what KCP provides, it's definitely not good enough. But I did think their draft was alright though, with Deron Holmes. Unfortunately, he's going to be out for this year, but in the future he could be a solid bench player. And then I also like Trey Alexander as well.
Yeah, Denver's offseason, as you guys both said, it was not appealing to me. Here's a quote from their GM, Calvin Booth. I just want dudes that we try to develop, and we hope it's sustainable. If it costs us a chance to win a championship this year, so this was earlier this year in May, so be it. It's worth the investment. Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Julian Strother should not be the reason why you just let Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go. A dude, again, 3-and-D, proven winner. He's the perfect fit next to Jokic, the perfect fit next to the starting core. They can't just rely on the development working, and that quote really frustrates me. And just the offseason in general, I mean, you're replacing KCP with Christian Brown and more usage, hypothetically. You're really relying on Russell Westbrook here, and I don't like Russ's fit with Jokic. And most of his minutes will have to be with Jokic, you would presume. And I don't like the fit with Jamal Murray also, because Jamal Murray, we've never really seen him off the ball to another guard. But just from what I would believe, I don't like the fit there. And just in totality, you're a team which is in the window, and again, as TK said, they've got worse 2 straight off seasons, losing Bruce Brown, which again, that one wasn't really their fault, but losing KCP, they could easily done. KCP was on record saying he will come back if they match the similar money. They didn't. Like, their only additions were Rust and Dario Saric. Although I like Saric for them, I think he fits the way they could like to play. It's just an off-season where I think Denver got dramatically worse, and they're not even locked for the playoffs for me. Locked for the play-in, at least.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the Nuggets front office doesn't understand that the title windows are not, it just doesn't come anytime. It's very rare for those to be happening. So it's saying, let's take 1 year off. Maybe in the future it'll help us. That's not gonna work in this league that's have much more period than ever before. So they gotta take advantage of every good Jokic year, which they have not been doing since the championship year.
Completely agree. Jokic he's not going to get younger. He's still going to be Jokic, but he's only getting older, and that's why the Philadelphia 76ers off seasons of old, like the last few years, where they wouldn't really change their roster and bank on the same group of guys, would frustrate me. This off season, they were perfect, pretty much. The Dallas Mavericks, the team we just discussed, they went at the finals. They hypothetically could have just kept the similar roster, and no one would really be mad at it. But they brought in upgrades at every position. They utilized their assets, they utilized their cap space, they utilized financial rules to upgrade their roster and to not just stay stagnant because the league changes. We see teams improve, we see teams decrease every year, and you don't want to be that team that decreases. And Denver just seems like the type of team which might fit into that role, especially Jamal Murray just coming off a really poor playoff run / Olympic run combined, and battling a lot of injuries soft tissue injuries the last year or so. It's worrying signs in Denver. Next, we'll talk about my team, the Golden State Warriors. Interesting off-season. Brought in DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, Lindy Waters, and Quinton Post. Lost Klay Thompson, Chris Paul, Dario Saric, and a few second-round picks. What do you guys think?
I mean, in theory, they did improve their roster overall. But when you look, obviously, the big story of this offseason, they tried to get Paul George, they couldn't. They tried to get Laurie, they couldn't. They improved their roster, but they could have done so much more with the assets they had, and they failed to do so. And that's what makes this a bad offseason for me.
Yeah, like you said, they got better as a team, but does it really matter because they're not gonna be a championship contender? And I just feel like they haven't really picked a direction of how they want to go, because they don't want to pay the premium to get that second star next to Steph Curry to try to hopefully compete for another championship in his final years. And they also don't really want to tear it down either, so it's they're kind of stuck in the middle.
100%, man. 100%. As you guys said, we improved, hypothetically. I reckon on paper we improved quite a bit. defensively, definitely. But my issue is the fact that Markkinen was there for the taking, and we didn't want to add in Pajemski. And although I'm pretty critical of Pajemski, good young player, got some good upside, it's Larry Markkinen. He's one of the best plug-and-play guys you can probably think of in the league. We see how adding these type of players improve teams every season. Wiggins for us a few years ago. Denver. OG Anunoby for the Knicks. The Celtics, adding two of those guys. You have to take that opportunity when it arises. And selfishly, as on record, I'm a big Moody fan. I think we've had another off-season where we just have guys and we add them at the same position as Moses Moody, and I don't expect him to play much again next season, and he's going to request a trade or be traded, not extended, one of the few, and he's going to break out on a new team, and it's just so frustrating. Next, we'll talk about the Houston Rockets. Aaron Holiday re-signed, and they got Griffin for pick 43. What do you guys think of their off-season?
Yeah, I mean, I think Reed Shepherd has the potential to end up as the best player in this draft class. I really love that pick. And then AJ Griffin, pretty cheap price. He's not going to play. He's just a guy who's going to be a reserve. And then Aaron Holiday's a good re-signing. He's a solid player. I think they had a pretty good offseason, top to bottom.
Yeah, it was not as busy as an offseason. There were some rumors that they might go after Mikal Bridges. That didn't happen, but it's fine running it back with their young core that's very talented. It's kind of a good way to see who kind of belongs, I think, for this future and who doesn't. And then next year offseason probably be the year the next offseason will be the year they kind of make bigger moves, I think, depending on how this season goes for their guys. But I like the Reed Shepherd pick. I think he's going to be their future starting point guard. Yeah, overall, it's a decent offseason.
Yeah, really solid offseason for Houston. Didn't do anything stupid. They kept the guys that worked last year, because I thought they were really solid last year. They made big steps into a positive direction under Ime Udoka. They're still going to develop. And I'm interested to see how Jalen Green goes this season, because TK mentioned how next offseason is going to be the offseason for Houston. Jalen Green's, it's a make or break season for him, in my opinion, in terms of his next contract, if he's going to be a Rocket, his extension and stuff. He's got a lot weighing on his shoulders right now, and if he doesn't perform or isn't consistent, his next contract won't be in Houston, and it'll probably not be big time money. And I wonder how he fits just in all this, with all the pieces Houston have. Because Reed Shepherd, the way he balled out in Summer League, and obviously we can't look at Summer League as a big determining factor. However, he was very elite on and off the ball in Summer League, and he's got the ability to be the long-term point guard or shooting guard, with the Men Thompson still developing also. And it seems like Jalen Green's the one out the door next. With no Şengün and Green extension, these guys are going to have a big season. I'm pretty confident Şengün will get extended this time next off season. However, I'm not so confident about Green. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument that Houston has the deepest young core in the entire NBA. And I think that there's rumors coming out that they were going to try to trade for Kevin Durant, which is insane to me. I don't understand the point at all if you're Houston. This is just an offseason too early to try to make that big move for a star. You need this year to really figure out, these guys are going to be part of our future, these guys aren't, and this is who we need to build around. Instead of just trading half of your young core and a bunch of picks for Kevin Durant and then ending up losing in the first round or something. And I think I'm not very high on Jalen Green. I don't think he's going to end up being part of their long-term future, but he has to prove it this year. He's proven that he can be a good player when he's consistent. The problem is that consistency hasn't lasted for more than a month. So it'll be really interesting to see how he performs this year.
%100%. Yeah, Houston's is going to be a very polarizing team to watch this upcoming season, with all the amount of players who are playable. Interested to see how Udoka utilizes his pieces because he's a coach who loves to run a very tight leash rotation wise. He trusts his vets. I'm interested to see who they play. Like the starting lineup they used last season, I'm confident they'll all get high minutes. But I'm really interested in who their bench because Steven Adams is there, who I think will get minutes as a backup five. You've still got Jeff Green, who Coach Udoka loves. He played a lot of minutes last year. Cam Whitmore, Tyree Eason, Reed Shepherd, Amen Thompson. The list goes on. So I can't wait to watch Houston next season. Next, we'll talk about the LA Clippers. The Clippers brought in a lot of new guys this offseason. Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., Nico Batum, Kevin Porter Jr., Mo Bamba, drafted Cam Christie, re-signed James Harden, lost Paul George, Russell Westbrook, Mason Plumlee, Daniel Tice, and a second-round pick. What do you guys think of the Clippers offseason?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is obviously losing Paul George. They didn't offer him the 4-year max that he wanted, and they ended up losing him for nothing instead of signing trading him to the Warriors. And I mean, they did a decent job to like fill out their roster, I guess. They did what they can do with their financial situation. But like, it's really not a good. They're not going to be good next season. I think there's a good chance that they end up missing the playoffs. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs as of right now. And when you have a guy like Kawhi Leonard in the final years of his career as a superstar, then this just isn't going to pan out long term.
Yeah, this is just a bad offseason, plain and simple. You lose Paul George, who's their second best player. He's very crucial to them, And yeah, when they had all three of them, it at least gave you hope that they could make a run, assuming everyone's healthy. Like at least have that ceiling. Now that's gone, and they don't have any future either. So it's like, what's the plan now?
I think there's for a lack of a better term, they're quite screwed because I don't think they're going to be good this season, and they don't have their own pick. That goes to OKC. Yep, OKC. But just mentality, it's a scary sight because Kawhi Leonard, he had a healthy year last season for the most part, and we know with Kawhi he gets hurt very constantly, and he's only getting older. So those soft tissue injuries, those bad injuries are still going to continue. James Harden, declining year by year. He's going to have to take more of an offensive load again this season. And the young pieces are quite literally Bones Highland, Cam Christie, Kai Jones, Kevin Porter Jr. Like, these guys aren't, the names and their play styles just aren't appealing for the future. Like, they're just, on any team, they're going to be the 7th, 8th, 9th man in the rotation. Like, the Clippers might be the 9th seed, 10th seed, 11th seed with no picks, and they're just getting older. This is entering some really gloomy stages in the next few years for the Clippers, and they're going to have to utilize a lot of things to their advantage. Next, we'll talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Brought in Bronny James and Dalton Knecht in the draft. Re-signed LeBron James. Re-signed Max Christie. Lost Taurean Prince and Spencer Dinwiddie. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, the Dalton Knecht pick, the draft could not have gone any better for them in that scenario. Him falling to 17 is crazy, and he's one of the players in this draft that can come in and immediately have contributions to a winning team. So I think that's a great pick for a team like the Lakers, who have aging LeBron, aging Anthony Davis. They need to maximize these final few years. And I mean, they didn't really do much outside of that. They brought back LeBron, obviously, had to draft Bronny, and like, he's not going to get high minutes no matter who you got at pick 55. They weren't going to. And I mean, they did what they could, and I don't think it's a great offseason, but it's not a horrible one either. They're going to end up probably in the play-in again.
Yeah, they're kind of in a similar spot to the Warriors, kind of. I mean, because they're still kind of in the play-in area. They didn't really get better. Like, they should probably be looking to try to improve their team to be a title contender at least, or somewhere close to it in LeBron's final years, and they haven't really done that. I do like their draft pick though with Dalton Connect, who I think some mocks them up like top 10, maybe even top 5. So getting him at 16 is just great value. But yeah, other than that, wasn't a whole lot that the Lakers did.
Yeah, really quiet offseason for LA. And although they didn't really bring in anyone, I don't mind their offseason, as I know a lot of people who do, and they're not a big fan of it. But what else could they really do? Like LeBron James, the pay cut talk, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really buy it. Like, I thought it was just a PR gain for LeBron, which again, that's not bad. It's just what I think it is. And I think it all really relies on the health. Vanderbilt's a key part of this team. The defense relies on him and AD quite in large weight. And D'Angelo Russell, how he holds up, I think him and Gabe Vincent are going to be in insane trade rumors all season. And I'm interested to see how D'Lo plays after, again, another lackluster playoff run. Because I thought D'Lo was really solid post-deadline last year, so interested to see how the Lakers play. I think they'll be in the play-in, as Mohit said, and how long will LeBron and the Lakers stay afloat? Next, we'll talk about the Grizzlies. Drafted Zach Edey, Jalen Wells, Cam Spencer. Re-signed Luke Kennard, lost Zaire Williams and a second-round pick. What do you guys think about their offseason?
Yeah, I like Memphis' offseason. I think Edey was a really good pick, actually. I've seen a lot of people being critical of it. In terms of, like, best player available, obviously he's not that, but he is what Memphis needed. They needed a big man who can really come in and immediately help them, and I think that's what Edey is going to do. And, I mean, outside of that, they just did what they had to do, and hopefully, if everyone can stay healthy, Memphis should be a true contender in the West with Ja Morant back, and then Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Marcus Smart, the rest of that core. That team is really strong, and they can make a run in the West.
Yeah, I think the Grizzlies were like the perfect fit for Zach Edey. They have a big who can cover up for some of his defensive issues in Jaren Jackson Jr. And then Zach Edey can help Jaren Jackson in terms of rebounding, and also helps Ja in terms of screen setting and rolling. Like, I think he's playing with a good passer like Ja. I think overall, other than that, they didn't do a whole lot, but I don't think they really had to, because I think getting Vince Williams onto a healthy Grizzlies squad now, and Gigi Jackson is going to be big, along with also a full season of Marcus Smart as well. So I think overall, with those and then everyone else being healthy, they should be a far better team, and I think they're definitely going to be up there as one of the best teams in the West.
100%. I mean, Zach Edey, he what I think he'll do in year one will be quite similar to what Steven Adams did next to Triple J. They're quite similar players, although Edey's more of a back-down offensive player and Adams doesn't really look at the rim. Everything else, I think they're quite similar. Really good screen setters, bruising bodies, rebound at a high level. So I'm interested to see how Triple J complements Edey, because I think on paper they complement each other quite perfectly, and how Edey can use his screen setting ability to free up Desmond Bane, Vince Williams, Luke Kennard. I think Memphis is going to be really good this season, and hopefully Ja Morant stays out of trouble and stays healthy, because if so, they're going to be back up there for a top 3, top 4 seed in the West. Next, we'll talk about the Timberwolves. Extended Luka Garza, brought in Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., Australian Joe Ingles, PJ Dozier, lost Kyle Anderson, Monte Morris, Jordan McLaughlin, Wendell Moore Jr. What do you guys think about their offseason?
I've loved the Dillingham trade. I'm a big fan of that. I think if he hits, he's another guy who can be one of the best players in this draft class. He has sky-high offensive potential. Defensively, obviously, he's lackluster, but this trade was made for his offensive potential, and I think he's going to be really good, potentially as the point guard of the future for Minnesota. And then I'd like the Terrence Shannon Jr. pick. I think he can be a solid player in the future. Joe Ingles is just a good veteran. And they didn't really lose much. And I think they should once again be one of the better teams in the West. And
It was a very interesting offseason. I think the Dillingham trade came out of nowhere. I did not expect this at all for the Timberwolves out of all teams to do this, but they did it, and I think it's a good idea. I think getting if he hits, he can be like a potential co-star next to Anthony Edwards for like the next 5-10 years, which is good to like extend this window because keep in mind, Kat and Gobert will be aging, so who's gonna be that second guy next to Anthony Edwards? And they're banking on Rob being that guy, and I think that's a good bet to make, especially considering the picks they traded away were like in 2031, like it's like 7 years from now. So I think it's a good overall, and also Terrence Shannon Jr. I think can contribute right away as well.
Yeah, I love their draft, especially after seeing them in Summer League. I was high on Terrence Shannon Jr. as a bucket getter and a good defensive prospect before Summer League, and that really just reinforced it to me. And Rob Dillingham, like, Mike Conley's getting up there in age, but I think Mike Conley's a perfect vet for him. His playmaking ability, his spot-up shooting, I think that's what Dillingham's going to have to focus on the first few years of his career to get on the court, with Conley still playing. But as soon as that comes to play, he'll get more confidence and he'll become more of a bucket getter like we saw in college. We'll get his next to Anthony Edwards. I think good off-season for Minnesota. Not much to talk about, but they did what they had to do, and they'll be up there again in the West. Next, we'll talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. Brought in DeJounte Murray, Daniel Tait, drafted Yves Missy and Antonio Reeves, lost Australian Dyson Daniels, EJ Liddell, Najee Marshall, Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Cody Zeller, and a few first-round picks. What do you guys think about the Pelicans offseason?
I was a huge fan of the DeJounte trade. I think Dyson Daniels can be a good player in Atlanta, but I don't think he was really going to get much playing time here in New Orleans, so I liked that trade. And 2 first-round picks is solid value for DeJounte, who obviously he wasn't great in Atlanta, but I think he can return to his Spurs form here in New Orleans. And then I like the Yves Missy pick. I think he's a solid center, and eventually he can be their center of the future if he develops well, because that was a big hole that they had. And then obviously they also brought in Daniel Tice for that. And I mean, I think the Pelicans, they have a really good young core, and they also have a good combination of veterans who can help to develop these young guys so that they can be contenders within maybe a year or two.
Well, for the Pelicans, I think it just depends how the season goes. It's one of those weird situations where we don't know how good this is until we actually see it on the court, because I see a world where this actually works with DeJounte Murray as a playmaker with Ingram and Zion. But then again, they haven't moved CJ either or Ingram. Like, I feel like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. They got 4 guys that kind of are ball dominant. But if they can make it work, it could be really, really good. If not, it might not go as well. And they also didn't really fill out the center position. I think relying on Yves Missy to do what Derek Lively did last year, I think is too much to ask for, because what Lively did is like very rare of rookie center contributing. And Dice is also not really a starting caliber guy either, so they still gotta find a center.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like their offseason, but their starting center spot really worries me. Tice is an undersized big, and even with that, he's not a starter in this league. And the size next to Zion does worry me. And as TK said, rookie centers they're not known for impacting year one. And that's we've seen the anomaly year of Wembanyama, generational talent, Chet Holmgren, and Derek Lively, and even Trace Jackson Davis all contribute year one. But it's quite rare for that to happen, and they're going to need a lot out of Missy. They're going to need high quality rebounding, shot blocking, and really high IQ basketball out there, because they've got no other centers that can play, and it's a huge risk to take for a team that just went all in for another max guy, and Brandon Ingram's expiring. like, obviously it was all hypotheticals and now it can't happen, but I was so intrigued at the idea of Ingram for Jared Allen for both teams. And because I think they they need to start Trey Murphy eventually, because this dude's he's improving year by year. Very high quality basketball player. He's about to get extended, or he should get extended. And he seems like the prototypical perfect fit next to Zion Williamson. So what New Orleans does next is the move which will decide a lot of my thoughts on them.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they can move Brandon Ingram for just a starting caliber center and then some picks, that would be massive for them. That would really complete their offseason and make them contenders immediately, because like I can't see a starting lineup with all of CJ, DeJounte, Ingram, and Zion working. I think they're going to end up having to let Herb Jones and Trey Murphy Jr. or Trey Murphy III start.
I wonder if they decide to have CJ off the bench, maybe start Murphy that way, but I don't know.
I think my issue with this, right, is as TK said, there's too much cooks in the kitchen, all ball dominant guys. And that's why I strongly believe one of Murphy / or Herb Jones, I would pick Herb Jones, needs to start on this team. But I just don't see it happening. Because if Murray and Zion are going to hold the ball quite a lot, same as Brandon Ingram, right? Those three alone. Then you still have CJ McCollum, who's earned the respect and he's earned the right in the NBA and for the Pelicans to have the ball in hand. So there's too much in that starting lineup. I think that could be very, very interesting to see how they hold up. Because Herb Jones, he has to start. He's an all-NBA defender. But he's not going to start. And I think it's going to take a lot of sacrifice for this team. Someone's going to have to put their hand up. And I think it should be CJ McCollum coming off the bench. But someone's going to have to just take a lesser role and be okay with it. Because Herb Jones and Trey Murphy are the future and the now. And they can be heavily, heavily big factors in this Pelicans season and the next few years. And I think they're kind of doing indirectly what the Warriors are doing with Moses Moody. They're not really trusting them enough to help winning basketball. And these guys deserve to start, let alone play. So I'm interested to see how they manage their rotations. Next, we'll talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder. Extended Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, brought in Alex Caruso, Isaiah Hardenstein, Nikola Topic, Dylan Jones, and drafted Topic, Jones, and AJ Mitchell. They lost Australian Josh Giddey, Lindy Waters, and a few second-round picks. What do you guys think about the Thunder's offseason?
I think they had one of the best, if not the best, offseason in the entire NBA. Obviously, bringing back Isaiah Jones and Aaron Wiggins, those are two very valuable role players. And then the Alex Caruso trade was amazing for them. Obviously, Josh Giddey, he struggled all throughout the season, especially in the playoffs. I think a fresh start in Chicago would be good for him. But bringing in Caruso, who's immediately one of the best defenders in the entire NBA, that's massive for them. And then Isaiah Hartenstein as a big man who can, get rebounds, protect the rim. That's exactly what they needed out of their big man next to Chet Holmgren. And I think they've done a very good job addressing their needs and making a team who's arguably the most complete in the entire NBA.
Yeah, they did pretty much everything well this offseason. They extended Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, two important role players, on very team-friendly contracts. Like, it's a bit of concern that maybe it'd be costing a lot to bring them back. It did not at all. And then they brought in Caruso without giving up any draft picks and getting a clear upgrade over Josh Giddey, who was never really going to live up to what they thought he would be if he was still there, because he just didn't fit. And then Isaiah Hartenstein fits exactly what they needed. They needed a high-level rebounder. And also a great luxury having another good passer. Like, they already moved the ball very well. Having another passing hub is going to be great for their offense and make it even more tough to stop. And then Nikola Topic as well. He was like a top 5, top 3 prospect before the season started, and then he got hurt, and now they grab him at 13. And if that works out, it's once again another big steal right there. And then Dylan Jones, I like him as well. Yeah, season overall, and I think they're the favorites to win the championship next year.
I think you guys hit the nail on the coffin there. I completely agree with everything you guys said. I'll just add my piece here. Just you replace Josh Giddey, who was barely in the rotation in the second round, and he was a net negative basketball player, unfortunately. You replace that with Alex Caruso, who's one of the best defenders in the NBA, one of the best plus minuses in the NBA, great 3-point shooter. He can play off the ball with that. And then you replace probably Jalen Williams is the one out of Arkansas's spot in the rotation with Isaiah Hartenstein, who was one of the best centers in the NBA last season. He fits a need. You replace two guys who barely played and shouldn't have played with two starters in the NBA to a team which already won 50 plus games. This team's going to be scarily good next season. And Topic, one of the best prospects coming into the draft, as TK said, unfortunately got injured. It's just crazy to me how OKC just does this year by year. Well, starting to with the Legends moves, and they've got all their picks. And Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara is still young, Chet's still young, Shea's still developing, Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, these guys are still really young. Like, the fact that Ousmane Dieng, who they traded heavily protected, keep in mind, first round picks for, hasn't panned out and probably won't pan out, and then they get any backlash for it. It's credit to Sam Presti, because he's made all these good moves, and they've only made one or two bad moves in the last few years. OKC is going to be a juggernaut, and if they don't leave this next few years with at least a championship, it's quite a disappointment if you ask me. Next, we're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns. Brought in Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee, Ryan Dunn, Oso Ighodaro, re-signed Royce O'Neal, Bol Bol, Damian Lee, and Josh Okogie. Lost Eric Gordon, Drew Eubanks, David Roddy, Nuzia Little, and EJ Liddell, who they also brought in this offseason. What do you guys think about the Suns offseason?
I'm actually a very big fan of their offseason. I really like the Tyus Jones contract. I think that's going to end up being one of the best signings of the entire summer. And he's a guy who can immediately contribute as potentially their starting point guard on a minimum contract. That's insane value. And then Mason Plumlee, solid backup big man. And then Ryan Dunn, I think, is one of the guys in this draft class who can develop into he's a very solid defender. And I also like their Oso Ighodaro pick, and brought back guys like Royce O'Neal, who's a very good player, Bol Bol, Damian Lee, Josh Okogie, and I just really like their offseason top to bottom. They didn't make any big moves or lose any big names, but they did what they had to complete their roster, and they're going to be a team that can be sneakily playoff, top 6 contender next year.
Yeah, for what they had, this was like a great offseason overall. They brought in Tyus Jones, who I think is exactly what they needed. They needed like a guard. Monte Morris, same thing. He's also just like Tyus Jones, has one of the most lowest turnover rates in the league. Like, both are one of the more steadier point guards in the entire NBA in terms of just being a traditional point guard, in terms of just passing. And then that's kind of what held them back at times last year, like not having a point guard. And then they brought back Royce O'Neal, who's a important role player for them. And Ryan Dunn is kind of what, he can, I think, contribute right away with how good he is on defense. He's very, very good on defense, and that they kind of do need that. They're not a great defensive team right now. And then Damian Lee was also, he was injured all of last year, but you can't forget that he shot 45% from 3 the last time he was healthy. So so they did a good job bringing him back as well.
I was a huge fan of the Suns offseason before Tyus Jones signed. I'm a huge fan of Monte Morris in general, and I thought him as a backup point guard would be really, really useful. The fact that I got Tyus Jones, who does the same thing but 3 times better, he's an he's quality starter in this league. It's going to be very interesting to see how they manage the guard rotation. But Phoenix have done really good, like countering their resources they had, let alone just in general. It's Ishbia and the Suns have done really, really good this offseason, and it's probably their last chance to win a ring with KD on the squad. Considering, again, considering with OKC's youth, Timberwolves' youth, these teams continue to get better, and the Suns are getting older. So I don't think they got enough, but huge credit to the Suns because what they had and what they have, they've done really well this offseason. Next, we're going to talk about the Portland Trailblazers. Brought in Danny Advia, Devontae Graham, Donovan Clingan, lost Malcolm Brogdon, pick 14 in the draft in that Advia trade, and a first-round pick in a few seconds. What do you guys think about Portland's offseason?
I love the Denny trade. I think 2 first-round picks and then Malcolm Brogdon is really good value for him, and I think he can be their starting wing of the future. And then I like the Donovan Clingan pick. I think that was pretty good value. And overall, I just think they had a solid offseason. They did what they had to, and obviously they're not going to be anywhere close to the playoffs this year, and that's not what they need to be. That's not where they need to be, and it's fine. They've done what they need to do, and they're going to be a solid team in a couple of years.
Yeah, the Denny addition was great. I think he's going to be definitely one of the better role players in the entire NBA, I think, in the future. Like, just a very good all-around player and very good defender. So I think bringing him in, I think, really complements the game of Scoot and Sharp, who aren't the greatest defenders, but they're going to be asked to do a lot offensively. And also getting Donovan Clingan, also, who can also be one of the best defensive centers in the league as well one day. So that's good. I think overall, I really like their young core. I think they're building something nice. I still think they gotta fire Chauncey Billups, but overall, I think they're heading in the right direction.
Completely agree. Danny Avdija is a very, very good basketball player. It's a compliment for any roster in the NBA, and they did well this offseason. Clingan adds to that center core, and he'll be the future of that lineup with Scoot and Sharp. I'm interested to see what happens with Anthony Simons in the next year or so. Jeremy Grant, these type of guys. But as TK said, they got to fire Chauncey Billups. He's the worst coach in the NBA by far, if you ask me. You see him standing there and not changing a single thing. There was a game earlier in the year where I watched. It was, I think it was Portland versus San Antonio. And the Spurs were running a 2-3 zone, right? And there was a lot of space on the wings. A shooter was right there, right? Billups is pointing to the other side and no moves were made, and it was just stagnant, and it was so frustrating to see, and I feel bad for Portland fans because that's not the only example I've got from this season. And for someone who's one of the best point guards in it, some coaching IQ with him, but he's coaching, as we saw with Steve Nash, these coaches who are very good in the NBA, it just doesn't really translate for some of them. But we've seen some which work quite well. Next, we'll talk about the Sacramento Kings. Brought in DeMar DeRozan, Devin Carter, John McLaughlin, Orlando Robinson. Re-signed Malik Monk and Alex Len. Lost Harrison Barnes, Davion Mitchell, Chris Dorche, Sasha Vesenkov, and a few second-round picks. What are your general thoughts on this offseason?
Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the DeMar DeRozan pickup. I think they should have gone for someone more defensively minded than DeMar, and you look at Sacramento, they are a very solid offensive team, and DeMar is going to make them better offensively, but defensively, they've always been mediocre at best, and I don't think this is going to help them out. I did really like them bringing back Malik Monk, and I think the Devin Carter pickup is good. I think he got injured, though. He's going to be out for the start of the season.
Yeah, I'm okay with the DeMar Smart signing. I think they kind of needed like maybe another guy who can get you a bucket, because I feel like their offense was a little too predictable, and I think the league kind of figured it out a little bit last year after they were the top offense the year before that. So I think getting another dynamic scorer from DeMar, I think, is kind of helpful for them. And they did get better defensively last year as well, and it's probably gonna get a bit worse with DeMar DeRozan on the team, but I don't think they got better. I think that's important, but based on the resources they had, I think it's all right.
Interested to see how DeMar's usage is, because he's always been a high usage guy. So interested to see how he plays off the ball. Keon Ellis and Keegan Murray are going to be extremely important as shooters this season. Ability to hit the ball, hit the three ball at a high clip, off catch and shoots are going to be extremely crucial to how far this team can go this season and in the next few. But the Kings, pretty solid offseason. I'm a fan of the DeMar move, but no other real thoughts. The Spurs now, they've extended Charles Bassey, Sandro Mamalakowski, brought in Stephon Castle in the draft, Nunez in the draft, Harrison Ingram, brought in veterans Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, a few first-round picks from the Dillingham pick 8 trade, and lost Devontae Graham. What do you guys think of the Spurs offseason?
I think they had a pretty solid offseason, top to bottom. It's too early to tell how that Dillingham trade is going to work out. He could end up being a really good pick in Minnesota. He could end up being a bust. So from the Spurs' point of view, not really sure how that ends up playing out. I like the Chris Paul pickup. I think he's the veteran point guard that they really need. And obviously he's not going to be a long-term guy there, but he can be a one-year rental and help with Wemby's development, help with a guy like Stephon Castle's development. So I think overall they had a pretty good offseason.
Yeah, I think this was a solid offseason. I think it was a good idea to not go completely all in for a big name already. I think it's a bit too early for that. So they got but they still got improved their team in some ways. Getting Chris Paul. I think he's obviously not a star player he once was, but he's still a useful player was still a great playmaker. I think he can also help in terms of leadership for some of the younger guys on their team, especially someone like Stephon Castle, a younger point guard who they probably value as their point guard of the future. At least that's probably their mindset right now. Depends on how he plays. I think Harrison Barnes is also another good vet in the locker room too. Another guy who can provide more space for the younger guys to operate with his ability to space the floor. And the Dillingham trade, I think, again, like Mohit said, depends on how Dillingham pans out. And if he becomes a star, they might regret this. If not, it's a fine trade. You get more future draft assets that could be used as trade chips for other upgrades down the line when they're competitive.
Now to the Utah Jazz. They brought in Larry Markkinen, they extended, brought in Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, Drew Eubanks, John Juzang re-signed, lost Chris Dunn and Omer Yurtseven.
So I think the Jazz had a pretty good season. They had a solid draft. Brought in Cody Williams. Isaiah Collier, I think, is one of the best value picks in the draft. Kyle Filipowski as well was a pretty good pickup. And they didn't really lose anyone significant. Chris Dunn, Omer Yurtseven.
I think overall, it was their draft was really good. I think Filipowski and Collier are both steals in the late first round and early second round. And then Cody Williams, I think, can also be a good player as well. And I actually am okay with the idea of extending Larry Markkinen, because I think either way, they're still, I think, one of the worst teams in the Western Conference, so it really won't hurt them in terms of tanking for a top pick. So I think if you get a top pick next to Larry Markkinen, I think you can form a really nice duo for a while, and I think that future will still be. I think your future would be much better if you have Lowry and that draft pick versus just that draft pick and maybe some extra first round picks. But they've already gotten a lot of first round picks from the Mitchell and Gobert trades anyway, so I think it's better off extending Lowry.
Yeah, completely agree. I like the Jazz's off-season. One move which I think is one of the dumbest moves in the NBA, but it won't mean much, but it's just Drew Eubanks signing on that two-year, $10 million contract. Find no reason for the Jazz to do that. However, it doesn't really mean much, but it's just nitpicking. in general thoughts, we'll go straight to the questions because I don't think there's much to talk about on the Jazz. What do you guys think? Which team has benefited the most from the offseason in the Western Conference? We'll add it. I'll add it all. Probably without the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I was a big fan of the Suns offseason with the Tyus Jones pickup. I think they did a pretty solid job, even though they didn't make any major moves. They did what they had to do, and I think they really improved their roster just with that Tyus Jones signing and then everything else they did.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Suns as well. I think they filled a lot of their needs. I think getting a true point guard and then getting a more proper backup center in Mason Plumlee as well. I think he's a much better than Drew Eubanks was. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. Phoenix Suns, I thought what they did, I thought it would be borderline impossible to get half of those moves done. To bring in Tyus Jones, as I mentioned before, he's one of the best point guards in the NBA, backup point guards in the NBA, and a really good starter. Monte Morris, same type of thing, just off the bench. And then I love their draft. Also, Iguodala, Jalen Bridges, and Ryan Dunn, the three guys who I think contribute some point in this coming season and years to come. And under the tutelage of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, I think that can be very useful pieces. I think Bol Bol was really solid last year. I think he could have a similar year this year, especially under Coach Bud, who loved his shooters. Interested to see how Nurkic plays under Coach Bud, see how Coach utilizes him. But yes, I would say quite easily the Phoenix Suns would be my answer for that. My second question would be, which team has been the most damaged this offseason?
I would say the Clippers. I just didn't really like their offseason top to bottom, obviously losing Paul George. And they could have gotten back value for him. They didn't end up getting anything. They brought in Derrick Jones Jr., Nick Batum, Mo Bamba, a couple solid role players, but it's not really going to move the needle, and I think they're going to end up missing the play-in from here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Clippers, blew it by not bringing back Paul George. I think Paul George, Kawhi, Harden was really their only hope of really doing something good, like for the next 10 years. But now you lose one of them, and now you're kind of in a hopeless situation right now. You don't have any young players in the future, nor any picks, and their current team is not, as currently constructed, nearly a championship contender at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you lose a top 20 player in the league, and you replace him with role players at best. And as I mentioned before in my few-minute rant, they've got no assets, and their asset pool is so weak to the point where this could get really ugly for LA. And I thought it would be the opposite, entering a new arena, new branding. I thought this would be an era that the Clippers would try and keep together. And we've seen Harden and Kawhi, the inability to stay healthy over the years. They're slowly declining for Harden. It's only going to get worse, and the Clippers, these guys are out of their prime, and it's, as I said, only going to get worse. And for my next question, what do you guys think, who were the best low ball signings in the West?
I would say Tyus Jones, getting him on a minimum for the Suns. I think that's huge. Be their starting point guard, and immediately he lets Devin Booker play his more natural shooting guard position, and I think that just overall makes the Suns a way better team.
Yeah, it's Najee Marshall for the Dallas Mavericks. I think he's still improving as a player. He's still pretty young. I think he's going to be even better next year. I think he's already good defensively. I think his shooting's only going to get even better, and he's going to make a big impact for the Mavericks this year.
Yeah, I like those answers, guys. Mine, someone we didn't even mention, I think it's Bryce McGowan's to Portland. I really like his game in general, and generally speaking, I think on a two-way deal, hopefully he proves himself. There's some minutes there to be taken, but on a standard deal type conversation, I really like what the Spurs did. I still think it's Chris Paul, because I still think it's quite low ball. I think people expect him just to be the playmaker, but I think what he can add just off the court in general is so impactful for a team's culture, and I think he's going to help them just not this season, but in years to come, even when he's not playing and not even on the roster. I also like what the Lakers did re-signing Max Christie. Although the price value isn't what I would like, I think the Lakers' young core is so weak to the point where if they lost someone like, it would look even bleaker. And I think that's something the Lakers need to do under Coach Redick, utilize these young guys more and try and get into a developmental program. I also like Chris Dunn to the Clippers. That'll probably be my answer now looking back at it. I think Chris Dunn's a very good backup point guard in this league. I really wanted the Suns to get him. And I think although they've got a lot of guards there, I think he's going to stand out as the best behind James Harden. What team in the West needs to go into a rebuild? Well, I think I'll speak for all of us here. I think we all would pick the LA Clippers. Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think the Clippers, we've all said it, they're getting old. Their cap situation is quite putrid. And what they did this offseason was quite blasphemous. Like, losing Paul George and not willing to up the price. I would rather just up the price and quote-unquote overpay him rather than pathetically losing him. It's like, I don't understand it, but I'll let you guys do some talking here, sorry. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers are the obvious answer. Their team is just not good right now. They don't have many assets. Even if they do go into the rebuild, though, without their picks, it's still going to be very, very difficult for them to have any sense of direction. So I think outside of the Clippers, I would go with the Warriors. I know it's kind of crazy because they have Steph Curry on the roster, but outside of him, the roster is really, really just not good enough to contend. And at this point, I think they're better off just trying to get whatever assets they can for Curry and letting him finish the rest of his career elsewhere.
I actually think it's the Warriors that should do it over the Clippers. I think it's only because I think the Clippers don't have any of their picks, so I think they don't really have. It doesn't really make sense to be bad and then be giving up high draft picks to other teams. It's like I don't think it really benefits them or anything like that. So I think you're best to try to at least compete somewhat until you're gonna get your picks back. It's unfortunately not an ideal situation, but that's kind of where they are at right now. But the Warriors, I think, like they have their picks and they haven't really been willing to pay the price to get win now pieces, like legitimately good impact pieces to improve the team significantly. So I think they should decide to just go into a rebuild and just build around the likes of Kuminga, Pods, Trace Jackson Davis, and whoever else they get back to, like, you know, start this new generation of Warriors basketball.
That's funny speaking because I'm actually in one of the Warriors fans. I'm in that type of pedigree where I want us to rebuild now. I completely agree with you guys there. Because although I think we're going to be good to watch this season, I think we're going to be better. I would much rather just have a future than be 8th seed, 9th seed. And although people want Steph Curry to have the chance to win a championship here in Golden State or compete again, I would much rather we be bad with Steph or without Steph than be the 8th seed, 9th seed and just be middle of the lottery year by year in, year out. Because I think we got a really good path here to compete. We didn't utilize that the last few years. We didn't want to make those deals, get rid of our picks. With that being said, I think we got to do the flip side of that one. Although I would hate the idea of saying it, but Steph Curry would be the one to trade. I think it's best for him also. I think Steve Kerr and the Warriors I don't think it's right for him now because we've lost Clay, his guy, and himself is getting older to the point where I don't think the Warriors are willing to give up the assets to go all in for a move to win a championship, as we've seen, and that's okay. It's frustrating, but it's alright. So Where would you guys? Sorry for putting you on the spot here, but where would you guys think is the best locations for Steph Curry?
I think maybe if it's after this season, after the 24-25 season, I would really like the Rockets as a potential destination. Also, I'm a bit biased, but I think the Magic could be a good place for him in the future, with him and Suggs as the backcourt.
Yeah, I actually think the Pelicans would be a good fit. I think it might require moving DeJounte Murray, because I think you should probably do that. 'Cause I think it's a big upgrade. I think it'll really help. I think it just fits perfectly alongside Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. And depends if they'll. I don't know how much else they have to get. I think they'll have to get Trey Murphy as well. But I think it would be worth it. I think.
I like the Rockets as a destination as a Warriors fan. I think they would have the most young players / picks combination to offer us. And I also like Orlando, same type of situation. The Pelicans one you raised is interesting. I don't think they would have, from memory, they gave up some first round picks in the Dyson Daniels, DeJounte Murray trade. I don't think they would have the young players / pick combination to wow the Warriors. I love Trey Murphy in Golden State. I'm so high on this kid. I think he could be an all-star in this league. But I actually don't mind the idea, but I prefer the other two more. With that being said, thank you guys for listening to the Fanspo Hoops podcast, episode 7. Thank you, TK. Thank you, Mohid. We out.